Over many decades, filmmaking has created its own standardized way of presenting images on screen. However, some stories warrant breaking these visual conventions and replacing them with unusual creative shots. Let's take a look at 5 of these out of the ordinary frames and unpack how exactly each technique is pulled off and what gear is used to do so. This video is sponsored by Squarespace, the one-stop shop for setting up your website. One of the trademark techniques in cinematography is to shoot with a shallow depth of field, where only one part of the frame, such as the subject, remains in sharp focus, while the rest of the frame in the background is rendered soft and out of focus. This is achieved by shooting with a wide open aperture on the lens such as T2, focusing on objects placed closer to the camera, using longer focal lengths, and by placing different objects different distances away from each other. The focus of a lens can only be set to one distance, so if an actor is 6 feet from the camera and the background objects are 60 feet from the camera, and the focus distance on the lens is set to 6 feet, then the actor will be sharp, while the background will be soft and out of focus. But what if filmmakers wanted to distort what optics can naturally do by rendering 2 objects which are far apart from each other sharply in focus? They can do so with this first creative technique using a split field diopter. This is a filter that can be placed in front of the lens. Half the filter is open and allows the camera to see through it and focus at the deeper focus point that is set on the lens, while the other half contains a diopter glass, which allows the lens to focus on a subject much closer to the camera, even though the focus distance on the lens is set much deeper. These come either as circular filters, or as rotor filters that can fit in a standard 4x5/6 matte box and be rotated with the gear wheel to find the right position before locking it in place. These filters mean filmmakers can split the focus and get both subjects close to the camera in focus with the diopter, as well as subjects further away in focus with the lens. Although it's quite a sparsely used tool, some directors such as Brian De Palma are known for using it as a way to layer information and characters across different distance planes within a single frame. For example, allowing us to view both a TV broadcast in the foreground and observe the actions of a character in the background at the same time. Or showing us a far-off character recording sound voyeuristically, and a close-up of the couple that he's recording in the foreground. Split diopters make it possible to incorporate different characters or subjects at different distances within a single shot, without needing to cut between 2 different shots, or do a focus pull between those 2 subjects. Rotating and positioning these filters correctly is very important if you want the deep focus effect to be seamless. If these filters aren't correctly positioned right on the edge of the closer object that they want in focus, such as this frame from Reservoir Dogs, then they become easily identifiable through a clear division between an area with out of focus bokeh created by the close focus diopter, and an area without bokeh which is in focus. A great way of hiding this effect is by placing the split line of the diopter against a solid area of color, like a white wall, in an area of dark shadow which will hide bokeh when blacks have less detail and are more crushed, or by using a lower strength diopter filter with less magnification and bringing the 2 objects on different focal planes closer together. Almost all shots in movies are framed with a straight horizon, with the camera correctly leveled and not rolled over onto its side. This makes sense. It's the same perspective of the world which our eyes see every day when we're standing, sitting, or walking with our head in a level position. However, some filmmakers deliberately subvert this convention by framing images with the camera unevenly rolled over onto its side, so that the horizon line is not parallel with the top and bottom of the frame. This is called a Dutch angle. Because it goes against how our eyes naturally orientate the world, framing in this oddly tilted way has quite a stylized, jarring, and unnerving effect. For this reason, filmmakers often pull out this technique for a specific moment in the story where they want to make the viewer feel uncomfortable, or get the frame itself to mimic the disorientated, uneasy, or tense feeling that the characters on screen are themselves feeling. It can also be used in conjunction with high or low angles to emphasize a power imbalance, which is a trick Guy Ritchie has used on a number of occasions. How Dutch angles are shot depends on what movement and rigs are used to hold the camera. This tilt can be done manually by an operator rolling over a handheld camera into a weird position, by using a remote head, a gimbal, or a trinity to roll the camera on its axis, or by unbalancing the horizon of the camera on a tripod. Because cinema cameras are heavy, it's usually not advised for tripod legs or a head to be extremely tilted or unbalanced, for danger of it falling over. Instead, filmmakers will usually use a Dutch tripod head such as a tango to get this oblique angle. A tango head is mounted between a fluid head and the camera and is capable of tilting the camera from side to side to either level the horizon or, in this case, to make the horizon deliberately uneven and slanted. Because it's a heavily stylized technique that's a bit disorientating to audiences, it's usually used quite sparingly. Having said that, there have been some movies such as The Third Man which lean on this technique quite heavily to give the entire film a muddled expressionist feel. Before we move on to strange filmmaking technique number 3, I'd like to thank Squarespace who sponsored this video. Gone are the days where you need to employ someone with super advanced web design skills to build a site for you. Squarespace makes setting one up simple. It's easy to get started with their new guided system, Squarespace Blueprint, where you can select from custom curated layouts and styling options to build an online presence custom tailored to your liking. Then use their optimized SEO tools to get your portfolio seen. You can also integrate and connect your social accounts seamlessly to further promote your brand and get eyes onto your work. So head over to Squarespace to get started with their free trial, and when you're ready to launch your site, go to squarespace.com/indepthcine to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Since we're on the topic of shots designed to disorientate the viewer, one of the most famous of these is the Dolly Zoom, sometimes called the vertigo effect. This shot applies two contradictory techniques at the same time to create a strange, unsettling visual experience for the viewer. The first technique it uses is moving the camera along a straight axis. More often than not, this is done by attaching the camera to a dolly and pushing it along a straight track. The second part of this technique is to zoom the lens. Zooming changes the focal length of the lens, which changes the field of view to be either wider or tighter. Because the speed of the zoom needs to be smooth and consistent for this technique, cinematographers will often use a zoom motor attached to the zoom gear on a cinema lens, which can be controlled by a device like a microforce, rather than zooming the lens by hand. When you combine these two techniques and time them correctly by moving the camera from a tight shot to a wide shot, while simultaneously zooming the lens from a wide to a tight focal length, the width of the frame will remain the same, while the perspective of the lens's compression shifts as the lens zooms and the focal length shifts. This creates an effect that distorts the perspective, either expanding or compressing the background in an expressionist way. It's often used to intensify the feelings of a character on screen, such as their moment of realization, revelation, fear, shock, or convey their feeling of vertigo. It's common practice to hard mount the camera onto cars with a variety of rigs so that they can be focused onto a character in a seat who remains still while the background flies past. However, a shot which uses the same concept, but which is a lot more unconventional and rare, is the Snorricam, a rig that straps the camera directly onto the body of an actor. After Darren Aronofsky famously used an early iteration of this rig on his indie movie Pi, the Snorricam gained popularity as a niche rig for mounting the camera onto actors. It provides quite a stylized perspective with a few different effects, depending on how it is rigged. The most common method is for it to be latched onto the face of the actor, conveying a sense of disorientation, drunkenness, or psychological unease. It can also be flipped around to shoot more of an over-the-shoulder shot from behind the actor, which provides a subjective point of view from the character's perspective. Or even flipping the camera around in its front-mounted position to shoot a direct, forward-facing POV angle. The Snorricam is made up of low-weight carbon fiber hip plates that attach to a vest, which the actor can wear. It has a cheese plate on the back and front, which can be used to mount an arm with a ball head and support rods which hold the camera on one side, and a weight to counterbalance the front heavy camera on the other side. There's also a new sliding track system available with a fluid head, called the Sputnik arm, which can even be operated by an actor during a take to change the point of view of the camera from front-facing to forward-facing. Macro shots that focus on an object incredibly close are not too unusual. However, what happens when filmmakers need macro capabilities from an unusual position, or with interesting movement without a bulky macro lens and big camera getting in the way? One tool that can be used is a snorkel lens system. These lenses come in different forms and with different uses, but are mainly divided into two categories: probe lenses and periscope lenses. Probe lenses are long, straight, and can focus incredibly close to objects. This makes them great for shooting macro shots where the camera moves in a straight line incredibly close to an object, or for shooting macro details underwater in a tank where the camera can be placed outside the water and the lens inside the water. Periscope lenses come with the added advantage of being able to tilt, swivel, and pan the little macro lens at the end of the barrel to get the perspective into positions which conventional lenses are unable to go. Regular non-macro lenses can also be used with some of these systems, for example for shots where the camera needs to be incredibly low to the ground to shoot a low angle shot. So low that placing a regular camera in that position on a hi-hat or slider would not be low enough. One disadvantage of using these extended optics is that due to their designs they usually come with quite high aperture values such as t5.6 or higher, meaning that they will have a much deeper depth of field and much more light will be required to expose with them. However, since macro shots have an incredibly shallow depth of field anyway, it's usually desirable to shoot with the lens stopped down a bit. Hope you enjoyed the video. As always, thanks to all of you for supporting the channel by watching, commenting, and especially to those that get the videos early on Patreon. Otherwise, until next time, thanks for watching and goodbye.